The moment my own daughter tried to send me to prison, I felt something colder than anger, because the evidence she built against me was the same trap I'd been setting for her all along. Before we get deeper into this story, make sure you're subscribed and drop a comment telling me what time it is in your part of the world. I've spent most of my life building things that don't fall apart. 32 years in commercial real estate. Quiet deals, clean contracts, no shortcuts. The kind of work where one wrong signature can cost you everything, and one right one can protect you for decades. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't emotional. I was careful. That's probably why it took me longer than it should have, to accept that the person trying to destroy me was my own daughter. Her name is Emily, and for most of her life, I believed she was the one thing I'd built that couldn't be corrupted. I was wrong. The first crack didn't come with shouting or drama. It came with a sentence, soft, casual, almost forgettable. "You should start thinking about stepping back, Dad," she said it over dinner. My house, Sunday night, same table we'd used for 20 years. Her tone was polite, but there was something underneath it, something rehearsed. I remember setting my fork down slowly. "Stepping back from what?" I asked. She smiled. Not warmly. "From everything." There was a pause after that, a strange one, the kind where the room feels slightly off, like something invisible just shifted. My wife didn't say anything, just kept her eyes on her plate. That was the second crack. Emily had been working with me for 6 years by then. I brought her into the business myself, taught her how to read contracts, how to sit in a negotiation without saying too much, how to spot desperation in the room. She learned fast, faster than I expected. But somewhere along the way, she stopped asking questions, started making decisions on her own, and recently, she'd started moving money. Small amounts at first. Nothing that would raise alarms, but enough that I noticed. I didn't confront her. I watched. 2 weeks after that dinner, she invited me to one of her presentations. That's what she called them now. Not meetings, not updates. Presentations. It was at our downtown office. Conference room, glass walls, full view of the city. She had a group of investors there, people I'd never seen before. You don't forget faces in my line of work. I walked in, took a seat at the end of the table. She didn't introduce me. Not properly. "This is my father," she said, like I was a guest. Not a partner, not the owner, just there. Then she started talking about expansion, about restructuring, about modernizing leadership. And then she said something that didn't belong. "We're preparing for a transition period." I didn't interrupt. I just watched. Because that word, transition, it's never accidental in business. It's always planned. After the meeting, I pulled her aside. "Transition into what?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "A version of the company that isn't tied to outdated thinking." Outdated. That word stayed with me. I looked at her for a long second. "You mean me?" She didn't deny it. She just said, "You've done enough." That was the moment I stopped reacting and started paying attention. That night, I went back through our financials, not the summaries, the raw entries, timestamps, authorization logs, signature records. That's where I saw it. A pattern. Transactions approved under my name. At times, I wasn't even in the office. Not sloppy mistakes. Clean. Precise. Almost perfect. Almost. Because there was one thing Emily never learned. I never used the same pen twice for legal approvals. Sounds small, it isn't. Different ink pressures, different stroke habits, subtle shifts. Her signatures matched mine visually, but not physically. And that's when something clicked. I didn't call a lawyer. I didn't confront her. I did something else. I started documenting everything. Quietly, every file, every timestamp, every anomaly. And then I introduced something new into the system, a document. Simple. Routine. Nothing dramatic. An internal authorization file tied to a property I transfer. But embedded inside it was a marker, a digital watermark linked to access logs. Anyone who tried to alter it would leave a trace, not obvious, but undeniable. I didn't tell anyone, not even my wife. 3 days later, Emily came to me with a concern. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Dad, there's something you need to explain." She placed a folder in front of me. I opened it, and there it was. My signature on a document authorizing an illegal transfer of funds, large enough to trigger an investigation, serious enough to put me in prison. I looked up at her. She held my gaze, cold, certain. "You need to tell me the truth," she said. Truth. That word again. I closed the folder slowly, because the moment I saw that document, I knew two things. She had crossed a line she couldn't come back from, and she had just activated something she didn't understand. "Where did you get this?" I asked. She didn't answer immediately, just tilted her head slightly. "You signed it?" No hesitation, no doubt, just confidence. That was the third crack. Not anger, not fear. Confidence, the kind that only comes from believing you've already won. I leaned back in my chair, studied her face. There was no guilt there, no uncertainty, just calculation. And that's when I realized something that changed everything. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional. This had been building for a while. Long enough for her to think she had control. Long enough for her to believe I wouldn't see it coming. I slid the folder back to her, calm, measured. "Then we should let the authorities take a look." For the first time, something flickered in her eyes, just for a second. Then it was gone, replaced by something sharper. "Maybe we should," she said. That night, I sat alone in my office, lights off, city reflecting against the glass, and I replayed everything. The dinner, the meeting, the transactions, the document, the signature, the confidence, and one detail kept bothering me. Something small, something most people wouldn't notice. But I did, because I put it there. That document she brought me, the one with my forged signature, was the same document I had embedded with the marker, the one designed to trace whoever touched it. Which meant only one thing. Emily hadn't just forged evidence against me. She had taken the exact bait I left behind, and she didn't even realize it. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel panic. Just clarity. Cold. Precise clarity. Because now it wasn't about suspicion anymore. It was about proof. And the moment she decided to take this public, she wouldn't just be accusing me. She'd be exposing herself. The next morning I got the call. Formal, controlled, expected. An investigation had been opened, and my daughter was the one leading it. I hung up the phone slowly, stared at the city for a long time, because the trap was set. The evidence was moving, and Emily believed she was the one holding all the power. She wasn't, but I needed her to think she was, just a little longer. Because the real question wasn't whether I could prove the truth. It was how far she was willing to go before she realized she had already lost. The call came in just after 9 a.m. Measured voice, professional tone, no assumptions, no accusations, just procedure. "There's been a formal complaint filed against you, Mr. Carter. We'll need your cooperation." I told them I understood, and I meant it, because cooperation was exactly what I wanted. By noon, the story had already started moving. Not publicly, not yet, but internally. The shift was happening. Emails got shorter. Conversations got quieter. People who used to walk straight into my office now knocked first, and a few didn't come at all. That's how you know something serious is in motion, not when people talk, when they stop. Emily didn't come to see me that day. She didn't need to. She was building something bigger than a conversation, and I could feel it. Instead of calling lawyers, I did what I've always done when something doesn't add up. I watched. I sat in my office, pulled up the access logs tied to that document, and let the timeline unfold. The watermark I embedded wasn't visible. It didn't alter the document. It just recorded, quietly, every access point, every edit, every device that touched it. What I saw wasn't random. It was structured. The document had been opened 3 times before Emily brought it to me. Once from a private network, external. Once from inside our office system, but not from her workstation. And once from her device. That last one sealed it. But it was the first 2 that mattered, because Emily wasn't working alone. That realization didn't surprise me. It explained her confidence, her calm. You don't take a swing like that unless someone convinces you it's safe. Around 3 p.m., I got a message. Short. Board meeting, tomorrow, mandatory. No signature, but I didn't need one. That night, my wife finally spoke. We were sitting in the living room. No television, just silence stretching between us. You should just settle this quietly, she said. I turned my head slowly. Settle what? She hesitated, and that hesitation said more than anything else. This doesn't have to become something public. There it was again, that tone, careful, distant, almost rehearsed. Do you believe I did it? I asked. She didn't answer right away, and that was answer enough. I nodded once. Not in agreement, just acknowledgement. Because now I wasn't just dealing with a daughter who had crossed a line. I was dealing with a house that had already shifted around me. The next morning I arrived early. Earlier than usual. The office felt different. Not hostile. Just colder. Like I was already being remembered instead of recognized. The boardroom was full by the time I walked in. People I'd known for years. Some avoided eye contact. Some held it too long. Emily sat at the center, not beside anyone. At the center. That told me everything. She stood when I entered, composed, controlled, professional. Thank you for coming, Dad, she said, that word again. Dad. Not partner, not founder, just something softer, smaller, safer to remove. She began presenting. Structured timeline, financial discrepancies, documents, signatures, patterns. It was clean, very clean, too clean, because real fraud is messy. This wasn't messy. It was curated. At one point, she paused and looked directly at me. I didn't want it to come to this, she said. There was something in her voice now, not doubt, performance. She wanted them to feel like she had no choice, that she was the responsible one, the one protecting the company. Then came the moment she thought sealed it. She held up the document, the one with my signature, the one I had planted. This, she said, is what forced my hand. Forced. Interesting choice. I didn't interrupt, didn't argue, didn't defend. I just sat there and watched, because this was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment she felt completely safe. After the presentation, the room went quiet. One of the board members, Thomas, cleared his throat. You're saying these approvals were unauthorized, but signed by him? Emily nodded. Yes. And you're certain? No hesitation. Yes. That confidence again, steady, unshaken. Then they turned to me, every eye in the room, waiting, expecting, judging. I leaned forward slightly, calm, measured. May I see the document? I asked. Emily handed it to me without hesitation. That was her mistake. Not the forgery, not the accusation, the confidence. I held it for a moment, looked at it, like it was new, like I hadn't already seen every layer of it. Then I set it down gently. Everything you've presented is very organized, I said. A few people shifted in their seats. They expected denial. They expected emotion. I gave them neither. But organization, I continued, isn't the same as truth. Emily's expression didn't change, but I saw it, that small tightening around her eyes. Are you suggesting this is fabricated? Thomas asked, and I looked at him. No, I said. I'm suggesting it's incomplete. That landed. Not heavy, just enough. Because now they were listening differently, not as judges, as observers. Emily leaned forward slightly. What exactly is missing? She asked, still confident, still composed, still unaware. I sat back, let the silence stretch just long enough. Then I said something simple. Access. A few people frowned, didn't fully understand yet, but they would. Every document leaves a trail, I said. Not just signatures, not just timestamps. Access. Now they were paying attention. Emily didn't speak, but I could feel it. That first shift. Not panic, but awareness. I'd like the full access logs for that document, I said. Thomas nodded slowly. That seems reasonable. Emily spoke quickly now. They've already been reviewed. Too fast. Too defensive. There it was. Then it shouldn't be a problem to review them again, I said, calm, steady, unmoved. The room shifted again, subtle, but real. Because now it wasn't just about what she showed. It was about what she might be hiding. Emily sat back, folded her hands, regained her composure. Of course, she said, full transparency. That was the moment I knew. She still believed she could control this. She still believed whatever she had built was enough. It wasn't, not even close. Because what she didn't know was that the moment she accessed that document, she left something behind, something that connected her to everything, and not just her. I stood up slowly, buttoned my jacket. I'll have my team provide the logs, I said. Then I looked at her, just for a second, not as a father, not as a victim, but as someone who had already seen the end of this story. And for the first time, she didn't look completely certain, just a flicker, small, but there. I walked out of that room without another word, not rushed, not angry, just finished with the performance. Because now the game had changed. She had made it official, public, irreversible. And the moment those logs came out, this wouldn't be her case anymore. It would be mine. But there was still one thing I needed to confirm. One piece that didn't fit yet. One access point that didn't belong. That external network. The first touch. The one that started everything. And if I was right about that, then Emily wasn't just trying to take me down. She was being used. I got back to my office, closed the door, pulled up the log again, zoomed in, focused on the origin, and then I saw the name attached to the network. Not a stranger, not a competitor. Someone much closer. Someone who had been in my house while all of this was happening. And suddenly, this wasn't just a betrayal anymore. It was something much worse. Because the person helping my daughter destroy me was someone I had trusted, just as much as her. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was worried, because I finally understood the shape of it. The name tied to that external access point wasn't a stranger. It was Daniel Reed, my son-in-law. He'd been around for 8 years, quiet, polite, always respectful, at least on the surface, finance background, mid-level experience, nothing exceptional, the kind of man who knows just enough to be dangerous when given access. And I had given him access, not directly, but through trust. Family dinners, conversations, occasional advice, enough to understand how I operated, enough to study me. That was his advantage. Emily's was something else. Emotion, conviction. She believed this was hers to take. He just needed to show her how. The next morning, I didn't rush. I didn't call anyone. I made coffee, sat by the window, watched the city wake up. Because timing matters more than truth. Truth without timing just looks like defense. Truth with timing looks like inevitability. At 10 a.m., the board reconvened. This time, the tone was different, less confident, more cautious. Emily was already there, Daniel too. That told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't hiding anymore. He thought they had already won. I took my seat, placed a thin folder in front of me, nothing dramatic, just paper. Thomas opened the meeting. "We've received the additional access logs," he said. He glanced at me briefly, then back to the room. "Let's review." I didn't speak. I let the silence do its work. The logs were displayed on the screen, clean, structured, undeniable. Timestamps, devices, access points. At first, no one said anything. Then someone leaned forward. Wait, this shows multiple users. Thomas nodded. Yes. Emily stayed still, but I could see it. That slight tension in her shoulders. And this external access, another voice said. Who does that belong to? That was the moment, the one where everything shifts, but no one fully realizes it yet. I leaned forward, calm, measured. That would be Daniel, I said. The room didn't explode. It didn't need to. It just tightened. All eyes turned, not to me, to him. Daniel smiled, small, controlled. Of course it does, he said. I was helping review the documents. Helping? Interesting word. I nodded slightly. Then you won't mind explaining why the first edit originated from your network before the document ever existed in our system. That landed, harder than anything else, because now it wasn't about access. It was about origin. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked at Emily, just for a second, and that was enough, because in that one glance, everything they had built connected. Emily spoke quickly. He's been assisting me. That's not unusual. Her voice was steady, but it wasn't confident anymore. No, I said quietly. It's not. I opened the folder in front of me, pulled out a single page, placed it on the table. This is the original document, I said. No edits, no signatures. Then I slid another page beside it, the version you presented, side by side. Same structure, same formatting, same everything, except in one detail. The watermark. Invisible, I said, but traceable. Now the room was still, completely still. Every interaction with this file was recorded, I continued. Not just who signed it, but who created it. Emily's face changed. Not dramatically, just enough. Because now she understood. Daniel leaned back slightly, arms crossed, still trying to hold control. You're implying we fabricated this? He said. I looked at him. Not angry, not emotional, just certain. I'm not implying anything, I said. I'm showing you the timeline. Thomas cleared his throat. Daniel, can you explain the origin point? Silence. Not long, but long enough. Then came the shift, the one you can't undo. I think we should involve legal counsel before continuing, Daniel said. That was it. The moment he stepped back. The moment he stopped answering. Emily turned toward him, confused. Then, something worse. Realization. Because this wasn't part of the plan. I didn't move, didn't press, didn't need to. Legal's already involved, I said calmly, and they've reviewed everything. That's when it broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Emily's composure slipped. Daniel, she said, soft, uncertain. He didn't look at her. That was the final piece. Because in that silence, she understood something she hadn't allowed herself to see. This wasn't just her plan. It never was. I stood up slowly, not to dominate the room, just to finish it. The document was created externally, I said, modified using internal access, signed using a replicated pattern, and presented as evidence. I let the word settle, which makes it fabrication. No one argued, no one defended, because there was nothing left to defend. The board moved quickly after that, not out of loyalty, out of necessity. Daniel was removed first, immediate, no discussion. Emily was different. She sat there, still, quiet, not looking at anyone, not even me. The investigation didn't take long after that. It didn't need to. The evidence was complete, clean, structured, just like they had built it. Except this time, it told the truth. Weeks later, Emily came to see me. No lawyers, no strategy, just her. She stood in the doorway of my office, smaller than I remembered. I didn't think... She started, then stopped. I didn't help her. I thought I was protecting something, she said finally. I nodded once. From me? She swallowed, didn't answer. That was enough. I didn't know she said. I know, I replied. Silence again. Then she asked the only question that mattered to her now. What happens next? I looked at her for a long moment, not as a businessman, not as an opponent, as her father. You live with it, I said. No anger, no punishment, just truth. Because consequences don't always need to be loud. Sometimes they just stay. She nodded slowly, turned, and walked out. I haven't seen Daniel since. The company stabilized, the board adjusted, life moved forward. But some things don't go back to what they were, and they shouldn't. Because trust, once broken like that, doesn't disappear. It changes shape, becomes something quieter, more careful. I still keep that original document, the one with the marker, the one that started it all. Not as a trophy, as a reminder that the most dangerous betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from people who think they understand you, just well enough to try, and the only thing that stops them is knowing yourself better than they ever could. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more stories like this and share your thoughts in the comments.